Today is Tuesday, June 27th, 2006. I am Sarah Locker. It is a pleasure to conduct this interview for the Dakota Memories Oral History Project in Fargo, North Dakota. Can you please state your full name, including your maiden name?
Mary Eva Vetter Schell-Smith.
And when and where were you born?
In Linton, on the farm.
In what year?
1913, February 3rd.
Did you ever hear any interesting stories about your birth?
No.
What is the oldest memory that you remember?
By my birth,
Just the
living
oldest, the oldest childhood memory that
the oldest childhood memory was
earliest.
Really when I was about 6, 7, I was, I had an operation. I got sick, and my mother thought that it was stomach ache, and then she put hot pads on. So by the next morning, I took me to the doctor. Then my dad and I took the train to Bismarck, and then I was operated on, but it had ruptured. My appendix had ruptured. So they were not going to operate on me because they said that I wasn't going to make it, but my dad made them promise that absolutely you have to do it. Even if she dies, you have to operate. Well, they operated, and I was in the hospital for 3 weeks, and they brought me home. And I was in bed a week when I got home. And then, of course, I had to start. I couldn't walk. My dad had to teach me how to walk. So, but I'm here. I got out of it okay. That's the biggest, I think, sickness that I've ever had.
Were you sick after that?
No. That was just my appendix was out, and that was it.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like growing up on the plains in Linton?
Well, my best memories are on the farm. I think that my best memories are on the farm. We had a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful upbringing on the farm. The neighbors, every day, our neighbors, there's that two, Lizzie and Andrew. Every day, the four of us, my sister and I, every day we would be together. And we would build little houses, and we played dolls. So my memories were very good on the farm. And, of course, horseback riding, and then all the farm animals and working on the farm. I enjoyed farm. And I lived there till I'm in 4th grade when we moved to town. And in town, it was not that easy for us in town when we got there, because we couldn't talk English very good. So my dad had to take us and enroll us in school, and it was hard for him because he couldn't talk very good English. And so we decided that we're going to go into the 2nd and 3rd grade because we were told that coming from the farm, they're going to put you back because you're just not that smart. They're going to put you back. So we just decided we didn't want to be put back, so we'll just start in the 2nd and 3rd grade. Well, we were there for about a week, and the teacher asked my sister, she says, "Gosh, you know all this stuff. How come you know all this stuff?" She says, "Well, we're supposed to be a grade ahead." So the next day, I got to be put in the 4th grade, and she got to be put in the 3rd grade. So we did have a good education on the farm. And then I had a good time. I went to high school. We had a real good high school. But it's, like I say, it was very, very difficult because we could not wouldn't know the language. And we were, like I say, we were sort of discriminated against because we were German Russians and we were Catholic. And so we were discriminated against. But we lived through it and we were okay.
Can you share some examples of the discrimination you felt?
Well, like you would do something. Well, you'd say something. I was scared to death to talk. Because every time I would say something, I was always afraid I would pronounce it wrong, and they would start laughing. And the kids, then they would go, "Oh, you're just the Russians." They called us Russians. They didn't call us Russians, Russians. They called us Russians. So it was really hard for the first until we got settled in and got to talk a little better English. But it was hard when we first started school in high school because it was not a Catholic town. There was very few Catholics at Linton. So, and then of course we were German Russians, and we couldn't talk English, so we were discriminated against, but we lived through it. I can't say that I really had any hardship or anything. We lived through it okay.
So what was it like when you went to farm school then? Did you have that same?
Oh, farm school was wonderful, wonderful. We had, I bet I don't know how many different games we played, but one thing, we had to talk English when we went to farm school. I mean, like for instance, if we would talk German, they had recess in the morning and the afternoon. Well, if they would hear you talk German, well, you didn't get to go out to recess, because you had to talk English. So we picked up pretty fast. We picked up the English pretty. Wasn't not very good, but we picked it up, so it was. And we had so much fun. We had so many different games, and the creek was not too far from the school, and there would be ice on it. And we start dancing when we went to farm school. We used to go down on the ice and we would dance, and we had a wonderful, wonderful. I loved farm school. I really did. I enjoyed it very much.
Can you share some of your favorite memories from farm school? Some examples.
Well, I can give you an example. Funny. We lived about a quarter of a mile, I think. It wasn't very far. We had to go up a hill and then down a hill, and we went to school. It didn't make a difference whether it stormed or whether it was cold or 40 below zero. We went to school. Dad used to put a scarf around our faces, just the ice and then when we get there, your ice would be full of frost. But we saw to that. Well, anyway, we got in one of those, like a barge, like whatever you got on. There were no sides to it or anything. And we had the one horse, Sam. And at that time, there was 4 of us going to school. My brother Mike, Lawrence, and my sister Rosita and I. And we had to go up the hill, and we were sitting on that thing, going up the hill. Well, when he was going down the hill, all 3 of us rolled off, and Mike just kept on going. When he got to school, he looked around. We were up on the hill, and he was down at school. That was the funniest thing I think that ever happened to us. Of course, he came back up and got us, but it was snowing, and it was really exciting. I enjoyed the farm school. I really did. More so, I think, than in town, because I don't know. You mix more with the kids. They were all the same. Everybody was the same. And in Linton, there was different nationalities and everything, so it was different. I liked the farm.
You said you played a lot of different games.
Oh.
What games did you play?
Oh my gosh, like kick the can or Runcy Brun or I don't know, I can't remember all, but we had a lot of over easy. You would throw the ball over there. We had so many different. And like on Sunday afternoons, we'd always go to the neighbors. Then we played. We had all kinds of games. We had there was a lot of fun on the farm.
Where did you learn all these games from?
I have no idea. I mean, I think from the older boys, I guess. I can't remember. They just, I guess from the older boys we would pick them up. But there were so many different games. Even indoors, like if we couldn't go outside, we had all musical chair and all that stuff. So it was fun. A lot more fun than in town. We didn't have that big thing. I enjoyed farm.
What were the teachers like? Between the farm school and the town school?
Some of them were okay, but some of them were all right. I'll tell you, we had one of them. I remember he was from Germany, and he was an older man, and he didn't stay at our place. He stayed on our neighbor's place. But I think we got more out of him than anything. Like I say, my gosh, I was like in the 3rd grade, and I knew the states and capitals, and he was wonderful. I remember 3 of them. Then there was a lady from Minnesota we had one time, and then when we had one from Linton, and he was not that good. I mean, he was a wonderful teacher, but he used to hide his drinks in we had a shed where we put the coal in, so to heat the room. We had just one room, and so he used to hide the bottle in the coal room, and he'd get kind of happy once in a while. And he was from Linton, though. He lived at Linton. And those are the only 3 teachers that I remember. But we used to sing all the time. I'm telling you, we had one of them that couldn't talk German. He used to make us sing German songs because he loved to hear German songs. No, I enjoyed it. We had a lot of good times on the farm.
You sang at school or you sang at home?
Well, we sang at home too. We sang at home. We had an organ, that you would pedal, and my oldest brother, he would play that, and we would sing. The whole family would. Some of them couldn't sing very good, but we sang.
Anyways.
Yes.
Who taught your brother how to play the organ?
I think. Well, we had a Coon. I think his name was Coon, and he played the organ at the church. And I think John got it from him or something. But they had, at the church they had those organs too, and I think he probably got it from him. I don't remember.
Did anybody else play any instruments?
No, we played a little bit of nothing.
Just sang.
Yeah, sang.
Do you remember a favorite song you would sing?
Oh my gosh, they would be, most of them were German. We knew every German song I think there was. But we did in school. We didn't sing German in school. We had a lot of songs in school that we sang. A lot of them, like from the South, Old Dixie and all those songs. We sang every day in school. That was a must. You had at least once you sang at school.
Did you have any other favorite activities you would do in school?
Not that I know.
Was there a class that you disliked?
Oh no, no. History was my favorite, and geography. I always remember. I don't remember of anything that. See, I was only like in the third grade. I started fourth grade in town. I got in fourth grade, so I was only at second. And we started first, second, and third. Until I had on the farm. It's only 3 grades. So I had the 3 teachers that I remember.
Did you go to school for the same amount of months on the farm as you did in town?
No. I think we only went 8 months. I know we didn't go 9 months. We didn't go 9 months. I think we only went 8. I know we didn't go 9 months.
In town, did you go 9 months?
Yes. Yeah.
Let's talk about your family a little bit. Do you remember your grandparents on your mother's side or your father's side? Didn't know either of them?
No. My mother's side, they didn't, she lost her dad when she was only 14, but the mother did not come to America, so I didn't know her. And my dad's parents, they came to America, but I didn't remember that. I mean, they were dead by the time I was born, so I didn't know them.
What about your father? Can you describe what he was like?
My dad? Mm-hmm. My dad was very strict, very, very strict. But and yet he was wonderful. He was. He always wanted his kids to have everything and the best. Like if we want to go shopping and we wanted something nice, we would not shop with my mother, because she would always want the cheap. She'd always look around to find the cheapest, but not my dad. My dad was very, 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 and he'd always. I remember my dad always dressed. He always dressed nice, and he wanted everybody else to be dressed nice. He's very particular about dressing, very particular about dressing. But he was years ago. You just didn't get that close to your dad. I mean, he was. I mean, he was the top man, and like I would. With Mother, we did. Well, Mother taught us all of our prayers and our. She was a wonderful, wonderful person. But Dad was strict. I mean, we have to whatever Dad says. That, like when I started going to college, I wasn't even thinking about going to college. But he just assumed. He said, "Ask my brother, can she stay at your house and go to school?" "Oh yeah, okay, you go to college." I mean, so I mean, we whatever Dad said, we obeyed. Except my younger sister did not that much, the baby. I had a sister that was younger than I am. She did not obey that much with my dad. She was spoiled.
What was your personal relationship like with your father?
Really, like I tell everybody, there was not that close of a relationship at that time. Like the only thing I remember, when he'd go away leave home, he would kiss us goodbye. But that's about the only time that I ever had a kiss from my dad. Like if he'd go someplace out of town, then he would kiss us goodbye. But I mean, outside of that, I can't remember. And when he talked to us, I was sort of afraid of him. I mean, not afraid of him, but I was not that close ever to my dad. I would listen. I mean, if he talked, I would listen. I would not talk. Now, with my mother, I could sit down and I could talk to her. But my dad was a very strict, very strict. But he was good. He was a good boss. I mean, he got everything done. Everything was put out. Yeah. And he, no, I admired him. I really did. I admired my dad. I can't say anything bad about him, except I never had close connections with him at all, ever. And I don't think, and with Grandpa, I don't know, when they first came here, Grandpa, I guess, was a very, very, very strict. Like my mother would tell me that sometimes he wouldn't even eat with the family. He would eat by himself, and he wouldn't even eat with the family, my Grandpa. I mean, he was that, I mean, he was, I don't know. There was a lot of things that happened. I mean, I don't know. But I mean, it was the same all over. I mean, I think every family was the same. I don't think there was anybody else different. At least I didn't know of anybody that lived different than we did.
You said that your father initially did farming until you moved to town.
Mm-hmm.
What was his job then?
On the farm?
On the farm, and then
Yeah.
also
Well, he was the one. See, that when they first came here, they hired people. There was a lot of people that came over from Germany. Well, they would hire out until they would get married or move by themselves, but they would work when they first. And my dad always had hired help until he had sons that could work. So my dad never really and truly worked that hard. He always drove the header, you know, and that was the easiest job. And I know my mother used to say, you know, you've got the easiest job. And she says, all you do is boss. He says, well, everybody needs a good boss. So he always, like she said, she always had the easiest job, but he always had help. And then, of course, then when the boys got older, then they did help the work. But he always saw to it that the work was done.
And then when you guys
From sunrise to sunset, doing harvesting, they worked from sunrise to sunset. Yeah.
Did he ever help your mother in the house at all?
The only thing that I can remember my dad do is sweep the floor. I don't remember him doing anything else in the house except to sweep. But he did sweep the floor. But outside of that, no, you didn't see men. Well, you saw some people work. Like when my oldest sister got married, then we didn't have any, and my younger sister and I were still too young to really do the work. So my brother, Lawrence, he was like a maid. I mean, he worked in the house. He would scrub the floor and help my mother wash. But my dad, sweep the floor, that's the only thing that I know of that he did in the house.
Once you guys moved into town, moved to Linton, then what did your dad do?
Go downtown.
What was his job?
Working every day. They would go downtown in the morning. He was really wonderful guy. He was like, if somebody would come in from the farm that he knew, he'd bring him home for lunch. Every day. We had somebody for lunch put there every day. And I know my mother used to, she'd say, my gosh, she says, I wasn't ready to have somebody come in for lunch. He says, well, what's good enough for me should be good enough for them. He never let her know that, but he always brought somebody. He was really wonderful. Usually we had somebody for lunch because the farmers would come in to shop and he'd see him, oh, come on home and lunch with him. But as far as working, well, he would help Ma in the garden a little bit. My mother always had a big garden in the house. When we moved to town, we had chickens. In fact, we even had a cow. And we had a big garden. So it was almost like living on the farm. So he would help her with the garden once in a while. But like I say, he would go downtown, then he'd come home, and then in the afternoon they would take a nap, and he probably would go downtown again. But there was that much. I mean, there wasn't such a thing as playing golf or going to a baseball game or stuff like that. One thing I have to say about my dad, when my brother, he went to high school. And he was in every kind of sport. There was football, baseball, basketball, you know, because they had to play, because there's only so many boys and they had to play every sport. And my dad and I would never miss a ball game. We would never miss a basketball game. And so he was very interested in that. You know, he always saw to it that and like if they play out of town, my dad and I, we took my mother once, we talked her into going to a football game. Well, she walked in, I bet we were in there 5 minutes, and the guy got knocked out. He was not, oh, take me home. I said, so that was her football experience. She never went again. So, but my dad always went to all the games. My dad was very, very interested in education. He wanted his kids. He said, it's enough I didn't have an education, and he wanted his children. So he was very, very, very interested in education.
Did he push all your brothers and sisters to go to high school?
Well, there's 4 of us that went to high school. Because out of 8. And 4 of us went to college out of 8. And at that time, that was almost unheard of, that you would send. My brother Joe was the 3rd oldest. He didn't even he went to private school even through grade school. He sent him into town. He was Strasbourg. I had an uncle in Strasbourg. And he stayed with him. And he went all the way through grade school in there. And then after he got out of grade school, he sent him to St. John's, Minnesota, to a private school. And he was the 3rd oldest in the family. So I never did know Joe that well because he was gone. He was gone most of the time. Then after he had got his education, then he worked away from home. And so I didn't get to know him very well at all until I moved to California because he lived in California. Then I got to know him. But my dad was, like I say, he wanted us to go to school. And the other ones farmed.
Okay. That's why the other 4 didn't.
The other ones farmed. Mm-hmm.
Now, was your dad retired when you moved to Linton?
Yes. Because when my dad moved to Linton, we had 2 farms. And the oldest brother lived on one farm. And then Frank moved on the other farm where we lived on. And then he built a house in town, and we had the most modern house in town because they put toilets in the house, and we had a bathroom in the house, and we had water in the house, and I think there was only one other family that had indoor toilets.
And this was when you would have been in 4th grade.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that was so we had a septic tank and all that. I have to tell you about this. They finally put a sewer in, and Strasbourg, they were all German people, all old German people. And when they start talking about putting a sewer in, they said, no way, nobody's going to go to the bathroom in my house. That's impossible. We're just not going to have a toilet in the house. That's unheard of. I'll never forget that. Well, they talked the old people they finally put the sewer in, they got their toilets in. But those old people, Mike, can you imagine a toilet in a house?
I suppose your neighbors didn't get indoor.
Well, as time goes on, after we did, we had a septic tank, but they finally, in a year or 2, I don't know just how long, they put the sewer lines in, and then we connected up with the sewer, because we had a septic tank, because there was no sewer line in there. But after we got in, then gradually, that's when it really started to put in plumbings and all that stuff. A lot of people after that started having it then. But it just, I think there was one other family that had a bathroom in besides us.
What else was modern about your house?
Well, it was one at that time, of course, he had built it. He bought an old house, and then he tore it down, and I think he left one wall or 2, and then he completely rebuilt it. And like we had a living room, we had a dining room, we had a kitchen, and everybody had a sun porch with all windows around it. And we had 1, 2, 3, we had 4 bedrooms. We had 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, but we had 4 bedrooms. And we had not a bathroom, but we just had it, we had a downstairs toilet downstairs, and then we had a bathroom off of my mother's bedroom. Like I say now, they say, oh my gosh, we have to have 2 bathrooms. Heck, I said we had 2 bathrooms in 1925. And we didn't have a bathroom down there, but it was a big house. It was real nice. It was nice. They had nice rugs in it. They didn't have wall-to-wall carpeting, but they had area rugs in there, and they were nice, really nice. And it was nice. We had a piano, and the house furnished real nice.
Oh.
It was a nice house.
So you didn't have to share a room a lot with?
Well, yes.
You did share?
One was a guest room, when somebody came. My sister and I slept together. I have never slept alone in my life. When we lived on the farm, Barbara and Rosina and I slept in one bed all the time until she got married. Then after she got married, of course, my sister and I slept together. And then when we moved to town, we didn't have our separate bedrooms. One bedroom was a guest room in case somebody comes. We only had the one bedroom. The only time I slept alone, she went 2 years, she went to private school, my sister, so then I slept by myself. But outside of that, then when I got married, of course, I didn't sleep alone, so I've never slept alone. I'm sleeping alone now.
Yeah. Took you a few years to get your own bed.
Oh, no, I'm missing it. I reach over to see somebody's next to me. No, my husband died just a year ago.
Oh, okay.
So I still miss him.
Still getting used to it then. Can you describe your mother some more?
My mother was really quiet. She was a very, very quiet person. She didn't say, she was a very good Christian though. Oh my gosh. I mean, like when Lent starts, we had a book, a real thick, and it was German, and it started with the birth of Christ, And every night she would read us just so much. So by the end of Lent, she got to the crucifixion, I mean, but she was a very, very, very Christian. And I mean, in our house, we prayed. We prayed before we sit down. We prayed after we got up. We prayed before we went to bed. We had to stand in line and pray. And during Lent, every night we had to kneel down and say the rosary every night. And honestly, sometimes it was kind of funny. Somebody get the giggles or something. We'd get chased out. But every night during Lent, she was very, very, and like when she used to tell me that when they were first on the farm, they didn't have a church there at Rosenthal. The only church they had was Strasbourg. And that was about, 3 miles. I don't know just how far it was. But I had a blind aunt that stayed with us. And she said she used to carry a baby, and Aunt Margaret would hold in her apron string, and they would walk to Strasbourg to go to church. And I couldn't, but yeah, she said, and she says on the way in we would play the rosary, or on the way we played. She was a very, 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 and she was a quiet person. She was very, very quiet. But she was easy to talk to. I talked a lot with my mother. I was really close to my mother. And that's one thing I regret. I moved away in 1942. We moved to California, and she was still alive then. And that was the hardest thing I think I ever did. I hate it, and I still regret it, leaving her. Yeah, but she was a very, very, and a hard worker. Oh, she worked so hard. My mother worked so hard. The washing part was so bad, the scrubbing. They would scrub, and they used white sheets, and can you imagine farmers' oil? And they had a big boiler on the stove, and they put water and boil it, And then they would wash the clothes. Then they would put the white clothes in there, and then they would boil to get all this. Then they bring them back out, and then they'd wash them. And then after that, they rinsed them, put a little bit of bluing in the water. So they washed it 3 times, and on the scrub. And then my brother Lawrence, he was the one that had to use the wringer. They had a wringer there that you had to put the clothes through. And he didn't want that job. But they worked so hard on farms. That was so hard. Because they retired when Dad was 50, but he was tired. And he died in 66 with a heart attack. But they worked hard on the farm. I mean, my mother worked harder than my dad, I would say. I really would say my mother worked harder.
Wait a second for the clock to go by.
And then I was telling, we lived real close to the church on the farm. My dad donated a piece of land, and the farmers get all together. We had churches all over at that time. I mean, every few miles there was a church. And we never, they always would celebrate during church, if it was the Assumption, it was the Assumption or whatever. Ours was, I don't remember what it was anymore, the church. Katechumai fish, they called them. Everybody would come. Priests would come from different, And my mother would cook for all those priests all the time. And at that time, the farmers, they had what they call a summer house or summer kitchen. You lived in a big house in the wintertime. Well, in the summertime, you lived in the summer kitchen, you know. So you did all your cooking in the summer kitchen, and you would eat in the summer kitchen. All you you would sleep in the big house. But when the priests came, they never ate. During my time when I was young, you never ate with a priest. They ate separately. You had to bring the food over into the house, and they would eat in there, you know. Or sometimes we'd have the bishop there for confirmations, and they would eat. They always. I've thought about it. I don't think she ever got paid for it. Not that I know of. I don't think she did. But I mean, she always fed all those priests. It was really, I kind of. I mean, she did so much. My mother did. She was such a good person. You never did hear her swear. She just only said one word in her life that was bad, and I'm not going to even repeat it because my dad says, you can't talk English, but you can sure swear. Yeah, she was a wonderful person. Yeah.
You said she cooked for all the priests and for the bishop. What was your mother's cooking like?
Well, I guess chicken. In the summertime, we mostly had fryers, you know. We never, like when we never now, they make soup with fryers. My gosh, the old hens were for soup. You know, you'd have soup. And they made chicken soup usually a lot, but they used vermicelli or they had nipple soup, you know. So, but my gosh, I just can't remember because see, I was that like, but they were good. They did a lot of cooking. Oh my gosh, like they make mashed potatoes, and they had in the summertime we had vegetables in the summertime. Like we had our own cabbage, or we had lettuce, and they'd make it with cream. And my mother she even had cauliflower. In the summertime, we had vegetables, and then we also used to butcher little pigs. Oh, they were just delicious. Those little pigs were delicious. Oh, and she had that. But in the summertime, I don't know if we ever had beef. It was mostly chicken, or then in the wintertime, of course, that's when we had pork. That's when for all the year they would make sausage and pork, and then in the wintertime we had mostly pork. But in the summertime we had chicken and little pigs and stuff. I don't remember I don't remember my mother ever baking I don't know if she ever baked a pie or not. I can't remember if she ever baked a pie. But she made a lot of that kufa, or they made cake, but pie, I don't know if she ever did or not. But they make like for a sauce, you know, a dessert or something, they would Jell-O. They made a lot of Jell-O, and they'd put whipped cream on it, and that was their dessert, you know. So.
What was your favorite dessert?
On the farm, I guess Jell-O. I can't remember much of that. I don't remember that. But we used a lot of cream. We had a lot of whipped cream and stuff. And I know she made cake and cookies. She didn't make that much. At Christmas time, she made cookies. But during the year, I don't think she made that many cookies either. It was more kuchen. They made a lot of kuchen. Or they make other kinds of stuff with raised dough, you know, that they made. They made a lot of buns and stuff like that. But I don't think she baked cookies except Christmas time.
Did you guys ever make ice cream?
Oh my gosh, did we make ice cream? We made ice cream.
How did you guys make the ice cream?
Well, we had ice cream. I mean, we had one of those buckets, you know, and you put it. The thing went on the inside. Then you put ice around the outside, and you put the inside. Then you would have the thing going. And there was Lawrence and Mike and Nina. The four of us, we did so many things. If we stay home from 4th of July, then we could make some ice cream. Okay, we made ice cream. We ate ice cream, and we ate ice cream. We ate so much ice cream that we all got sick of it. I'll never forget. Oh my God, the four of us. It was really funny. Like when they go to town or something, they'd always say, "Now don't make candy." I don't know why they didn't want us to make candy, but I think they were afraid we'd get burned or something because we had the cream. Oh my gosh, they were just barely out of the way. The pan was on the stove. Ice cream. So gosh, Mike made a pudding. My brother made a pudding one time. Oh my gosh, we couldn't eat it. And he tried to feed it to the dog, and the dog didn't even eat it. But we always got into something, the four of us. Always. See, the others were all married, and we just... We had a really good time. We always got along fine.
What other candy did you?
Oh, it's always
make?
was that. I think just cream. We just would take sugar and cream. It was almost like a caramel-like. Sometimes it got really hard. We had all kinds of dumb things. Yeah.
Well, talking about your brothers and sisters, can you give us the order of your brothers and sisters from the oldest to the youngest?
Oh yeah. Well, John, and then Frank, and then Joe, and then Barbara, then Mike, Lawrence, then I and my sister Rosina. But the four of us, I don't remember the other ones as well as because we were always the ones that had to stay home. The other ones were, like if Mom and Dad would leave, there was just the four of us all the time, like Mike and Lawrence and Nan and I. We were home alone, and then we'd always get into a lot of trouble.
What would happen if your parents caught you getting into trouble?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. When you were in the summer kitchen, you had a stove there. And if you want to start a fire, you put a few little piece of wood in there, and then my mother used to put a little bit of kerosene in it, and they put it in a fire, and then it starts. Oh my gosh. My brother, Mike, he put gasoline in. Oh yeah. And he put a match in, and boom, everything. Oh my God, he could have, oh my God. Oh. We could have all burned. None of us got hurt. Oh my God. We had a lot. What a favorite spoon. We had one of Ma's favorite spoons. And he bent it. It was so funny. And I still remember he went way over by the road and he buried it over there so nobody could find it. And it's the funniest thing. It was Ma's favorite spoon. But I don't think she ever even thought about that spoon being gone. No, we did. We did a lot of dumb things. But thank God we never got hurt. But we did a lot of dumb things. Oh.
Any other stories?
Huh?
Any other stories you'd like to share?
Oh no. I got it. This one is really funny. They all had those really big guns, those shotguns. And the folks were gone. And I guess they said they kicked back or something. So Mike and Lawrence, they tied it on a pole. And the bullets were about like that. And honest to God, we put those bullets in and we pulled the trigger. And honest to God, that we didn't, there's chickens or pigs or anything around that, or that we didn't. I'll never forget, we pulled the trigger and boom, up. Oh God, because they said we couldn't hold it because it would kick back, would knock us down. So they tied it on a pole. Oh, I'm telling the four of us, I'll tell you. But none of us ever got hurt, thank God. I think God was with us. Did
your parents ever?
Oh my gosh, they did have killed us if they found out. No way. No way. The ice cream was because we ate too much and we got sick. They know about the ice cream. But those bullet things, oh gosh, no. I don't think they ever found it. And about the spoon either, because I can't remember that she ever missed her spoon.
It's probably still there.
Probably still there. Yeah, we did a lot. But we were home alone a lot. The folks would leave and then we'd be by ourselves. But we always got along. It's funny. I mean, I can't remember that it ever even, while they were gone, but did anything. Oh.
If somebody was misbehaving and your parents caught them, who would usually discipline?
Oh, my dad. Definitely. I can't remember my mother ever spanking anybody, but my dad did. My dad, he did too much sometimes. I figured he did too much. I never got a spanking, but the boys did, and it was too much. They had a strap like that they would use, instead of, they didn't use the hand. They'd always stick that darn strap. And I thought it was too much. I see, the older boys, I don't know if they ever got. The only ones I know would be Mike and Lawrence, but the other ones and my sister got a lot of them, but not with a strap. She he just hit her no. My dad was the one that, my mother, I can't remember mother ever spanking any of them. I don't think she did. That was up to Dad.
How did your parents meet? Did you ever hear
I have no idea. My dad, he was an only son. He had a lot of sisters, I think 5 or whatever, sisters. And my mother always said that the girls, his sisters, did not much want my dad to marry her because my dad's side of the family was a little bit more wealthier. They had a farm and they had, I guess, grapes and a little bit more. And my mother's side of the family, he was a shoemaker. And to them that was degrading, I mean, so they never wanted my dad to marry my mom. So she said they always never did like her, but I don't know how they finally did get married. And, I don't know, just what. But they were married. See, my oldest brother was born in Russia, so they were married in Russia.
Did either of your parents have to deal with any hard times?
Oh my gosh! Oh, the hard times were terrible. The first one was, when the banks all closed up, the stock market. So they, if you had money in the bank, well, most of that was gone. They would give you promissory notes but my gosh, you couldn't use. Nobody had money. You take those promissory notes. How are you going to collect? Because people didn't have any money. And then the drought came. That was horrible, 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 horrible. The fields were just black. I mean, there wasn't even weeds growing. Absolutely, thistles. Cows were dying. I mean, it was horrible. And sand piles, oh my gosh. One of my uncles lived out on the farm. I mean, the snow, that sand pile, you couldn't even see the door anymore. It had gathered up. It was that high. The sand was oh my gosh. And I'll remember one day, my dad and mother had gone out to the farm. And my sister and I, we were having a good time dancing. All of a sudden, it got pitch black, dark, nothing. And honestly, we got scared. We thought, Neen says, oh my God, we're going to die. The devil got us. The devil got us. And it was a dust storm. It was just like midnight. It got that dark, midnight. It was horrible. It was horrible. Just horrible. I mean, like I say, not even thistles. Some people bought thistles for their cattle, and it wasn't any good for them because they said they got diarrhea so bad from it. But that's all they had. They had nothing to feed the cattle with. It was sad. It was really bad. And I really don't remember how many years that it lasted, but it was sad. Everybody, and during then, most of the people lost their land. Most of them, because they couldn't pay their taxes. They lost their land.
So you were living in town.
Yeah, so living in town, we didn't have. Yeah, and then they lost their land, and then the government. I mean, the state practically had all the land because nobody could pay taxes. So they put a moratorium on. Governor Langer was governor at the time, and whoever lived on the farm could they take the taxes, or they could borrow on the taxes. But anyway, they could buy the land. Whoever lived on the farm. So whoever lived on the farm, like my brother could buy one farm, my other brother bought the other farm, and then like my husband's folks still lived on the farm. Well, they could buy, so they can buy theirs back. You had to live on the farm in order to, and then from then on, things start getting better, and start getting a few crops. And it was really bad. But it was, in a way, everybody was the same. You know what I mean? Nobody had money. So your next door neighbor wasn't any better off than you are, or the man down the street wasn't any better. I mean, everybody, my husband used to say, my gosh, this is okay. I mean, everybody's the same. If you weren't afraid to say, well, I can't afford it, I haven't got any money, because you didn't have any money. Like I say, like you would go to a movie, it was 25 cents to go to a movie. And on some nights, Saturday nights, whatever, if you brought a partner, you could go in free. So honest God, sometimes I was already married then. Sometimes, my gosh, we even had to borrow 25 cents from my sister because we didn't have the 25 cents. It was bad. But everybody, like I say, and everybody seemed to, people were getting along a lot better than they do now. We didn't have any killings like they have now. You didn't hear it. Everybody was the same. Your neighbor was the same as you were. So it was not that bad. It was bad, but everybody suffered. Everybody.
Did people pull together a lot to help each other out?
Well, yeah, because, and the government was good. I'm telling you, the government did help a lot. They got I don't know how much the farmers got, but the farmers got so much a month. And then they started the WPA, where they start working. And then they had CC camps for the young people. And they had NYAA, I think it was called. It was National Youth Administration, something. Like they got $20 a month. And they would go to the schools, and they would fix lunch, and they would sweep the floor. See, then the teacher didn't have to do that. I taught school in a country school, and you had to do your own sweeping and your own fire and your own. Well, the last year that I taught school, this young boy, I don't know, maybe he was 17, I don't know how old he was. He would come in and he would sweep the floor for me, and he would start the fire for me. At noon he'd bring us a lunch. It was wonderful. And he got $20 from the government. And of course the food was also furnished by the government. So that was just one. That was the year 1932, 33, when it was it for? Is when Roosevelt got in. Be president? Well, when he first got in, it was really, really, really bad. And he closed all the banks. And everybody just went crazy. You can about imagine my money, what are we going to do with that money? The money's all in the bank. People just went. And the reason I remember so well, I went to college then. I went to college in 32, 33. And people just went crazy. And that happened in 32, 33. And so in 3 days, with 2 or 3 days, he opened them. He opened up all the banks, and then he guaranteed, if you have money in the bank up to $100,000, it's insured. That's where that started out. So people nowadays are much, much better off because see, at that time, if you had money in the bank, that was gone. You didn't have any receipt for it. So at that time, 1932, 33, the government did an awful, awful lot for the people, like WPA and CC camps for the young guys, and I mean, they only got $40, I think, a month, $44. But they had to go out and work for it. I mean, the government didn't just say, well, here is $40 like they do now, send them a check. They had to work, even if it was 40 below zero. They had to go out, maybe work on a road or dig a ditch or whatever. I mean, they had to work for that money. And that's what I mean. And nowadays, they just send them a check. So I think it was much better if you have to make them work. Yeah, I taught school. My first year I taught school, I got $40 a month. And I paid $10 room and board, so I had $30. But I was glad I had a job. And my money went to the folks. so they had money.
All of it did? Did you
all of it? All of it. If I needed something, I got, but the rest of it all went to the parents. All my sister did the same thing. Yeah, we had to help out with the parents.
So did your dad end up losing money since he was retired?
Well, he had a little bit left in retirement and so, but see, Social Security at that time wasn't. It just started at that time, Social Security. So he worked a little bit. I don't know what. I can't remember because I know I got his Social Security card. So he must have worked someplace or something, or else he wouldn't have had that Social Security card. But he couldn't have worked long because I know he didn't get any Social Security, whatever. I don't remember that. Oh.
Did any of your brothers end up having to work?
They were on the farm. Mike, but in the meantime, in 31, Mike got married, and he was on the farm. The other, Frank was on the farm. They were all on the farm except Lawrence. And Lawrence, he worked in the creamery. And then he also farmed for a while up there by Bismarck or something. And then my sister and I, she taught school, and then she left. She came to California. She came to California first. And then I came out, and my school quit. I think I finished in April or something. And then we came to California in 1942. So I've been in California since 1942.
A lot of you went to California.
Not where we are. Most of them went, a lot of them went to Milwaukee at that time to find work. I know I've got relatives in Milwaukee or over there. And then a lot of them went to Southern California. Now, out where we were, there were not that many that came from North Dakota. Like, we didn't know anybody. Well, my husband's brothers came, but they came later, after the war. But right when we came out there in 1942, there were not that many from North Dakota. But a lot of them went to Southern California or to Milwaukee. They had to go someplace where there was jobs. So, anyway, they had to go jobs.
So that's why your brothers and sisters kind of scattered around the U.S. was to find jobs.
Yeah. What could you do at Linton? What could you do at Linton? There was nothing there. They could have farmed. I guess the year when we left in 1942, my husband could have gotten a job on the farm. Some Jake Horner, I guess his name was Jake, was going to hire him because most of the young boys were gone. The young men were all gone. They were drafted. And so they had to hire somebody to do their work. So he could have stayed and worked on the farm and helped put out the crop, But because there was no work, what are you going to do at Linton? I mean, you had to go back. If you graduate from high school at Linton, you go to college and then you're gone. I mean, there's nothing there that you can get a job.
Well, let's talk some more about living on a farm. Did you play with a lot of neighborhood kids? Well, not really neighbor, but
just two of them that we played with. I mean, the Kleins. Andrew and Lizzie. And like I say, they were either we were down there or they were up here, up at our house. And then we did, and it was really funny because we made our own dolls. I never had a bought a doll in my life, ever. And so we had a little playhouse, and we made dolls. We would take some material and we stuff it and made hits and then arms, and then we made dresses. And of course, Andrew was always with us, always with us. But we had a lot of fun. And then of course, when we go down to their place, the creek was right there. So we would go down to the creek, and we'd get in there. And oh my gosh, sometimes we'd go out, and oh my God, sometimes we didn't have much on, and oh God, old Andrew would, we had so much fun down there. They were nice, very, very nice people. And at that time, they just had the two children. Then later on, it was quite later on, because I don't even remember, they had two more children, but I don't remember them at all. I think in the meantime, we moved into town. But Andrew was my age, and Lizzie was Neen's age. But we had so much fun going joke cherry picking or down the creek or just the schoolhouse. Would go down and try to get into. They were real close to the school, and the teachers that's where they used to stay, boarding room, at the Kleins. The teachers that would. Just one year we had a teacher from Minnesota, and she stayed at our house, and all of us. I had just a few little things on my face, that there was smallpox epidemic one year. And I had, Mike and I were the only ones in the family that had smallpox, but not very many. But of course she went to school and she called this town, I guess, that we had. So they quarantined you. Nobody could go in or out. And I don't remember how long that, nobody could go to school, nobody could come in, nobody could go out. I don't know whether it was a week or, and it was not that bad. But some of the people around there, and a lot of people died at that time. And a lot of people had, I know my brother-in-law, and George, quite a few had it really bad, the smallpox. But I don't think any, I don't remember much. But I know I had just a few, and my brother had just a few. But the rest of the family, they couldn't go to school, and nobody could come in. They were very particular about that. But outside, those are the old, there was another farm, but we didn't see them, John and I don't even remember his name. But those are the two that we were real close to. The rest of them we weren't. Like on Sunday sometimes we would, when we got older, like we would walk over to the bushes, and it was, and to the Kelches, and which was quite a long walk, and they had girls. But I was already then in maybe second grade or third grade, and that on Sundays we would go a little bit further than the Kleins. But that's about all we had. The Kleins were the closest ones that we had. But it was funny, after we moved into town, we never got in touch with each other or anything. We just forgot about each other. So there goes my boyfriend, yes.
first boyfriend?
No, I had no, he was not my first boyfriend. No, he was not my boyfriend. He was just a pal. He was almost like family, you know. He was just like family almost. Yeah.
What was your role on the farm?
I really and truly, I didn't do much, to tell you the truth, because Mother wouldn't let us milk and wouldn't let us, neither and I, because like I say, we really and truly probably washed the dishes. That's about all. I can't remember ever cooking, and I can't remember that I ever helped wash. And because Lawrence, my brother, after my sister got married, Barbara, then Lawrence was like he had to do all a woman's job. He helped Mother cook, and he scrubbed the floors, and I think my sister and I were just not doing very much, just little chores probably. I know we didn't milk and we didn't cook. We didn't do much.
Didn't help with canning or anything like that?
Well, the animals, I mean, we had a lot of animals. I got to tell, it was really, really, really bad, though, because I was outside playing, and there was a little pig, and I was going along, the pig was going along, and I had a stick in my hand. I hit that stick, I hit that pig, and down he went, and I thought, oh my gosh, he's going to die, for sure. I goes in the house, came out, and I looked, the pig was up. So I hit him again, went down again. So that night, they were milking and they were feeding the calves. They had a calf. The calves, after they were done separating, and then they took the milk, and then the boys, like Mike and Lawrence, they would feed the calves. So it was already getting dark, and they were feeding the calves. And I was out there looking around, and all of a sudden I saw a little light following me around, just in the air. And I kept going, and and I thought, oh my gosh, the devil is following me because I hit that pig, and I was scared to death. Well, I found out it was a firebird that was coming, and the faster I go, but I thought sure the devil was following me because I hit that pig. And I thought that we was getting to a lot of little things, but when we lived on the farm, like barrels. We always had a big drum where we could, a barrel or something, we would put water in it, and we'd go in. I don't think I did much work on the farm, to tell you the truth. I really don't. Probably we did the dishes. We probably helped doing the dishes, but I don't think we did much work, because I was, like I say, I was in the 4th grade when I started school. So the 3rd. And milk, I definitely didn't milk. I did milk after we lived in town. I would go out on the farm. Well, then I would milk just because I wanted to. One thing I remember doing, and like they had the cattle would be in a shed, and they'd milk. There was a hole, where you could look on, and they had a 10-gallon can, and when they had the pail full of milk, well, they would pour it in the can. So, and each one of us, Neen had a cup, and I had a cup, and we would go inside, and they would milk from the cows, and they'd fill up those cups, and then there was foam on top. So we would drink that cup with those foam off, and we'd have the foam again and talk about it. And we never got sick. And nowadays they think, my gosh, in heaven's name, you'd be dead. But we always, every time they go milking, we'd come with our cups, and we would drink milk.
That was your helping?
Yeah, it was our helping. Oh.
You mentioned while we were taking a break, you remember the first car that your dad bought.
Oh, yes. Honestly, I just remember that. He was so proud when he brought that car home, and it was a Ford. And I know we were all outside. And so he decided that Ma should drive the car. So she gets in the car, and she starts going. But she didn't know how to stop it, And he was with her, and he was like, and she would go around and around and around and around. And oh my God, she got so scared. Well, he finally stopped it for her. She didn't know what to turn off, to stop. That was her first and last time she drove the car. She never, she rode in the car, but she never drove a car, ever.
Do you remember about what year your dad got the car?
Oh, I have no idea. I couldn't have been more than about 4 or 5, maybe 5. It's a long time. I mean, I could not remember. I know my uncle Jake had a car before my dad did. I remember that. He had a car before I did. But I remember the horse and buggy, though, real well. Because you had two kinds of horses. You had your work horses, and then you had your horses that you used for your sled or your buggy or for riding. The horses you rode, you did not work. They did not work in the fields. You had two different kinds of horses. And the ones that you rode, they were, oh my gosh, they were smaller horse. And we had one. He was a real old guy, Sam. And like on Sundays, like 4 or 5 of us would all get on that horse because he wouldn't go very fast. He couldn't hardly go. We couldn't make him go. But we all pile on there. Sometimes 5 or as many as could get on there. We'd pile on there, and then we'd want him to go. We had more fun in that. And I'll never forget when my dad had an auction sale, and my nephew, Frank's son, my oldest brother's son, Joe, he came over and he wanted that horse. So he came over with $1, and he said, he never called him Grandpa. He always called him Father, Father. She said, can I buy Sam? So Dad says, okay, you can have Sam, But he just. We had more fun. Like all of us kids would get on that horse, and we knew he wouldn't do anything. But some of those were kind of, I got on one time, on one of them. I used to herd cattle. I love go horseback riding. And if you put your hand back or something, they would buck. And boy, I bucked, boom, out I went. And Mike was there, and I said, Mike, please don't tell Mom. Please don't, because if she'd have known it, she'd have never let me ride again, So, but I just love to ride horseback. And they would cut the wheat, and then the land that was already cut, well, then sometimes they'd let the cattle in there, so they could some of the whatever, I don't know. But you had to watch out so they wouldn't go back over into the wheat that wasn't cut. So I was out there and I watched them so they would stay in there. And then at noon you had to bring them back into the pasture. I loved that. I loved that farm. I had more fun because on the farm there's so much to do where you couldn't in town. There's so much more things to do. And in town it wasn't that much to do. Or roller skating that's about it. I like the farm much better.
You'd also mentioned with cars and the buggies that the roads weren't.
Oh, well, you could about imagine what the roads were like, I mean, you could just barely drive. And my Uncle Jake, they had a car before we did. And my mother and his wife, Aunt Ann, I think her name, and Uncle Jake, they were going to town with the car. And the roads were bad. Well, they had gravel or just barely you can go. And my dad, of course, we had 2 horses. Oh, they were beautiful. My dad went to, we were close to an Indian reservation. If you cross the Missouri River, well, you were in the Indian part. And so he got 2 horses from them. And they were, oh my God, they were just beautiful horses. But they were not working horses. You used them for the buggy or the sled. And I can still remember that buggy, with the seats on, and it's cute. And so Dad and Neen and we got on the buggy, and we were going to go to town with the buggy because they had to get something. And he was on that. We call them Ship and Wreck, and they looked just exactly alike. Just wild. They're real wild horses. They were wild horses. And Dad got on, and we were on there, and my gosh, they were going with the car. Well, the cars, they couldn't go that fast because the roads were so bad. So Dad turned over, and we kept on going. We passed the car. I'll never forget. And Dad was so happy with the people at that time, the men especially. They were very, very, very proud of their horses. I mean, the work horses or other horses. I mean, they really meant something to those people. I mean, they were real proud of the horses. And those 2, I'm telling you, they were just absolute. I'll never forget when they still had them when after my brother was married. He got those 2 horses, but like if they would get loose and you would try to catch him, oh my gosh, You just had a heck of a time getting them, and a heck of a time getting them, because they were really wild. They never did really tame down those horses. But when they would run, I mean, they didn't run, they just trapped. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful. I'll never forget those horses. But my brother had them. When we moved into town, he got, I don't know what he ever did with them, but he had the horses. So. But then he had the working horses that you didn't ride those.
Now, you said you got the horses from Native Americans that lived nearby. What were...
Well, they would breed. Well, sure, they would breed horses, and you get horses. You go buy horses from different people, and then they breed them too, so you get little ponies, little horses, and they would breed them. Now, we had a stallion. We had a real the stallion was kept in the barn all the time. He was not let out. He was. They would take him down to drink water, and they put him back in the barn, and they would feed him, and he was taken care of.
What were reactions like to Native Americans?
Pardon?
What did people think of Native Americans?
Oh, well, we didn't associate with them that much because, they couldn't cross. Well, in the summertime, they had a little boat or a little thing that goes when across, And then in the wintertime, it froze up. Then every once in a while, we had no problems with them at all. Not at all. In fact, I didn't hardly see any at all. But I had an uncle that he lived over there for a while. He had a store, and I don't know how long he lived there. My dad used to go. We had people that lived right there at Lytton, and she played the organ in town, the lady, and her husband had Ford. I think we sold Ford cars, and she played the organ in church, and she had relatives over in Fort Gates. That's right across the river. And so Dad went over there once in a while with her. But the Sioux Indians are really, 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 they're dirty Indians. I mean, they're not. There's some Indians that are a little bit better but the Sioux are really dirty Indians. He said you'd come over and they'd have the food hanging out or the fish hanging out. And he said they'd take you in and want coffee. He said, God, you couldn't drink coffee. And so we never had trouble with them. They didn't come around. Once in a great while in the wintertime when they could cross, when the ice, then they could cross. It really wasn't that far if you can cross the river. But when the ice would freeze, when the water would freeze and not be ice, then they could walk across. Then once in a great while, after I graduated from high school, we had one, it was, Dog Eagle was his last name, but he went to high school there at Lytton. I think all the way through. I'm not sure, but I remember him being there. But I was out of school by then. But just the one went to school in Lytton. That's the only Indian that went to school. No, we never saw them. They never came across. We had no trouble with the Indians. I think I was over there once, where you could drive on this thing with the car, and then they take you across. And my uncle lived in Wakapala. I don't remember the town anymore where he lived. It was not in Fort Gates, but he lived there. We went over to see him, and then that's when I saw him. But I didn't see him. We had no problems with him.
Well, let's talk about school when you went to town. What was your class like? What was your school like when you went to town? When you're in the farm, you had the one room. Was it the same way in town?
Well, in town. Well, no, they had each. See, on the farm, you have every class. Well, after we were in town, like if you were the fourth grade, well, you're just like they have now. You're the fourth grade or fifth grade. And for us, it was a lot different, and it was much better, I thought, because, well, really and truly, you can get more out of it because the one teacher teaches just the one class. Where in a one-room school, well, they teach all classes, and it's not. I know because I taught one-room classes. I enjoyed it, though. I loved teaching. And both of my girls are retired teachers. So I enjoy teaching, and they both enjoy teaching. And I have a lot of relatives that are teachers.
Yeah. We've interviewed two of them. What would you do during recess in town?
Pardon?
What would you do in recess?
Oh, well, they had all kinds of games. Like sometimes some of them they even played. When we lived in the farm, they played marbles, or they played. I can't even remember anymore the game that we had to race around different. I don't even know what they call it, but we played that a lot. They had all kinds of games. I can't remember, but oh my gosh, we had all kinds of games on the farm. And in town, I guess we did too. Town, it was so completely different, and then they had the gym in town where you could play basketball, or they have exercises, where it's so much more in town. But in town, you didn't have all those games that you did that you had on the farm. I think they have more fun on the farm than of course, in town they have more like baseball and football, and which they didn't have on a farm. I didn't even know if there are any more farm schools. I don't know. We have some in California. We have some one-room schools where there's a few people living there, and they hire a teacher, and they have just the one room. But I don't know if they have any more in North Dakota one-room teachers.
Yeah, I didn't know California still had them too.
Well, I know they have one out of Petaluma, but it's just that they have one teacher teaches all classes. I don't know how many classes she has, but there's only one teacher there.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I've never heard of that before.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe the town kids' reaction?
Oh, it was really, they was funny. The people that have always lived there, the kids that always lived there, they didn't take to farmers. Oh, no. They didn't take to farmers. They called them names, they called them everything. They didn't take to farmers. They didn't like farmers. But of course, after you live in town, then you're no longer considered a farmer, But I don't know, my family always associated with the farmers. Always. I mean, they would come to town, or we would go out on the farm, or take the car to the farm, because most of the kids were the ones that I was. It's funny, like when I went to high school, there was only 3 Catholics, girls. The rest of them were, it was a non-Catholic school in town. And boys, I don't think there was more, maybe about 3 or 4 of them. So years ago, the Catholics and the non-Catholics didn't mix that well. I mean, the Catholics associated with the Catholics, and the Protestants associated with the Protestants. So there weren't that many Catholics. So we always used to visit the farms that were around. We'd go out. A bunch of us would get in a car and go out. And I know Mike, I think it was a Model A or something he had, and you could start it with if you have a file or something, you put the file in, you could start it. And a bunch of us girls got in it one day, and we took the car, and we took off, and we went out the farm. And then on the way back, the darn thing, when you turned the corner, the gas automatically went down, and the car took off. Oh my gosh, when it crossed the phone. And I was driving. I was never so scared. Well, that's the last time I took his car, because I had, the dumb thing. I didn't know when you turn it, see, you had to push the gas up and down. Well, when I turned, it fell down. It went down. I didn't, and it fell, and it took off. But I never took his car again. That was the last time I took his car. So we used to go out on the farms a lot and associate with the farms. We had games out there, and more so than in town. I didn't have that many people in town that I associated with. It's mostly people. We liked the farm anyway.
You're talking about obviously being Catholic, and you said that your mother was very, very religious. Mm-hmm. Would you go to church every Sunday?
Oh my gosh. And we loved it. Everybody went to church. Everybody wanted to. Everybody around, everybody wanted to church, because where else could you go? We'd love to get dressed. And you dressed up. When you went to church, you dressed up. And you went to church. Everybody wanted, we always walked to church, the other side of the drive. But if somebody had to stay home, see, they always prepared that when they get out of church, they come home, the dinner is ready. So they had to prepare, put on the stove, so in case when they come, the dinner is ready. So sometimes somebody had to stay home to watch it. Nobody wanted to stay home. Everybody went to church. Like I say, we had even if the priest didn't come, sometimes because we were on the farm, sometimes the priest didn't come, because the priest had to come out from Linton to our parish. We didn't have a priest there. But when the priest didn't come, people would still come to church. And they would play the rosary and the litany, and they would sing, and it was just like we were church, all the prayers and everything. Everybody would come. Everybody went to church. I mean, it was just, everybody just went. I mean, all the farmers around, if there was somebody missing, they think maybe they were sick or something, because everybody went to church. And you take like the farmers, they build their church. The farmers would get together, they built a church. It was their church. But the organist would always come and play the organ, and they'd sing, and they'd have the litany, and even if a priest didn't come. So everybody went to church. That was just like going and eating breakfast. They always went to church, everybody. And everybody got dressed when they go to church, dressed up. The men were wearing suits, and the women were dressed up, and everybody, they didn't come in with pedal pushers on.
What would a woman's dress look like?
Well, my mother wore kind of long dresses at the beginning that I remember. She never wore really short dresses. They wore a lot. My sister, I remember, wore a lot of skirts to be dressed up. She wore a lot of skirts, and they had these beautiful, beautiful sheer blouses and things, that they wear. They were beautiful. So that was mostly dress up, for women. And my mother would. And I think every woman, I think, had a black dress, because that was the color. If you had a black dress, you were dressed up. You wore black, for funerals. You wore black for maybe weddings. It's really dressed up. But I know my sister Barbara. She had, oh my gosh, she had beautiful, beautiful blouses, and then the skirts, and then this real sheer blouses and the long sleeves, and pretty. They were beautiful, beautiful. And the girls had just dresses on. There was some, in that book, there's some dresses. My pictures in there with dresses on. But they did sew. And the women did most of the sewing. I mean, most of that stuff was, but now those blouses, they were bought-in blouses. And they would, but most of it, years ago, and they did a lot of their own sewing. But years ago, we had they were Jews that came around. They had a buggy and a horse, and they had all kinds of stuff in the back. Like they would sell practically everything. Like, oh my gosh, for liniment for yourself, or headache pills, or material. They would even sell material so you can sew. They had all kinds of stuff, and they were Jews that come around. And I know they'd come down coming down the hill. They'd come down the hill, and Ma would say, "Oh, here comes the Jew," and they would buy all kinds of. We had very, very, very few Jews around. We had. We had one time. One of them opened up a grocery store in town. He didn't last very long. Then another one came in, he opened up a furniture store. He didn't last very long. So now when you went to Bismarck, there was people in Bismarck, but at Linton they didn't last that long. But they came around with a buggy and would sell all kinds of stuff. I know Mother always bought a lot of stuff from them.
Did he not last because he was Jewish, or because there weren't enough people?
Well, Jews was just absolutely not liked that much. Ever by the church, even at that time. So they just, like if there was any other place to buy anything, they would not go to a Jewish store. They would go to the other store. So they didn't patronize it, so they had to leave. They would, years ago, they were not that welcomed any place. So.
You said that Catholics were discriminated against as well. Was it?
Well, in Linton, that was just in Linton, though. Like on the farm, no, because we all were Catholic. In the farm, no, we're not. But you go into Linton, see where there was only, like I say, there was only 3 girls in high school that were Catholic, So we were not kind of looked down on, Oh my gosh, if you bought, you could do anything you want, but if you pick up a piece of meat on Friday, you were condemned. Oh, she's Catholic, They just didn't particularly care, We just people didn't mix that much. I mean, the Protestants and that. As far as shopping, yes. I mean, you went into any kind of a store. I mean, even if they were not Catholic, you went in and shopped. I didn't mean that. But I mean, as far as associating with each other, they didn't. Like, my dad didn't go and visit a Protestant family. Or a Protestant family didn't go and visit a Catholic family, That's what I mean about. They were not discriminated against, but they didn't associate with each other, like visiting or doing things together.
Okay. When you went to church, what was the seating arrangement like in church? Oh,
the children were up in front. The boys were on the right side. I think so. When you go in, I think they were on the right side, I think. And the other were on the left side. And the women were on one side, and the men were on the right side. They were separated. I mean, they didn't go together. And I mean, they were strict. They were strict. You knelt. When you're supposed to kneel, you kneel. You didn't sit back, or you couldn't even turn around. You looked straight ahead all the time. Boy, if you turn around, look straight ahead. I mean, they were very, very strict. But everybody did it, so I don't think we even considered it strict, because everybody did the same thing. But I mean, you knelt, and if you didn't, when you came home, and they saw you, like your mother or dad saw you sitting down in the back, how come you knelt? How come you sit down? How come you didn't kneel up? I mean, you knelt. And I'll never forget, we had one priest, Father Weber, I'll never forget him. We had prayer hour every Saturday night. And for an hour, you knelt. I mean, you knelt. You didn't look to one side or the other. You just stayed there and you knelt for a whole hour. Every Saturday night we had prayer hour. Then after we had prayer hour, then we went out.
What did you go out and do?
We went out to sometimes they had a dance, or sometimes they went to the movie, or sometimes we went someplace else. But we went to the hour. We had to go to the prayer hour every Saturday night.
Would he lead the prayers?
Pardon?
Would he lead prayers?
Well, yeah, he was there. He was there. But I remember him better than any other priest we had. I really liked him. I mean, he told us things that I still remember. Where the other ones, I mean, he explained everything so wonderful, and I remember so many things that he did. Where the other priests we had, they were just priests. I mean, I don't remember anything. But he was just so wonderful. He came from Germany, and he was Lutheran. And all of his relatives, and he almost starved. He didn't have a job. He didn't know where to go. And the priest took him in, and he sat and gave him food, and then he became a priest. And he was one of the best, as far as I'm concerned. He was one of the best ones. I remember him better than any other priest. Just wonderful. But he was so holy. He believed in prayers. He prayed all the time. And kneeling there for a whole hour. I know it. Well, my sister, that was on the farm. We had him on the farm. They went on the farm. And I know she did something in turn around or something. And I think he's the one that told Dad about it, because I know she got a spanking. And she never did like the priest again, ever. Because she did something that she was supposed to do or not do, and he told Dad about it, and she never liked Father Weber evermore.
Which church was he at?
He had the Linton Church and the Rosenthal Church.
Oh, he's
They had both of the churches. Mm-hmm. We never had a parish house with our church. Like most of the churches they had at that time, they had parish houses, and they had a priest there. On every, but we did, because, we didn't have that many Catholics in Linton, so he had the two parishes, the Rosenthal and the Linton parish. So he'd come out in the morning, and in the wintertime, they'd bring him out with horse and a sled, because there was so much snow, and they'd bring him out, and sometimes he would stay overnight, sometimes he didn't, sometimes he went back after Mass. And they had to pay the man that they brought him out. Because, they used to rent out horses and sleds and stuff in town years ago. So they bring them out with a sled, and sometimes they would, if it was bad, they'd stay overnight, and other times they would have the Mass, and then they'd take them back into Linton with the sled. But we never had a parish. We didn't have a parish house. But we had so many, many churches all over, and every church had a parish house. But we didn't.
How old were you when the church started using English instead of German?
Oh, I think it's after we moved into town. So I probably was in that, because when I moved to town, they used the English. They used the English when we moved to town. So I was in the 4th grade when they started using the English. But on the farm, we used what we called we had the catechism. I had to read all the catechism. That was all in German, and all of our prayers were in German. Our church was completely German on the farm, but in town. But they preached German in town. The sermon was German in town when we first moved to town. They didn't start English until I don't know when, but I know when we first moved to town because all the old people that went, the German people that went were German, so they had German. But there are still some German churches. We have one in San Francisco, and it's a Lutheran church, it's not a Catholic church, but they have all the services are in German. And the people from all around, of course, I think that's the only one around there because they come from all over and go to that one particular church. So there are still some German churches. But on the farm, it was all German. I mean, the songs and everything was German on the farm. The catechism. We had special instructions for our First Holy Communion, and we had it in a church. And we had, I don't know what his first name is. I know his last name was Kuhn. And he was the same one that played the organ. And he taught catechism. But everything was in German. But sometimes I think, gosh, it was really, I could almost memorize that catechism. But I don't remember anymore some of that. But we had everything. Like First Holy Communion and Confirmation, everything was German. All of it. Was German. But after we moved into town, then we start teaching catechism in English, because the kids were taught. They taught. Of course, we could. When we moved to town, maybe we couldn't talk very well, but as far as reading, we could read the English and we could do all the work in English. But it's just like Spanish. You can just like now you can understand the German, but you can't talk it. Well, it's the same thing. We couldn't talk the English, but we could read it. You could write it. So we did really good in that. But I was one that I didn't talk unless I absolutely had to, because I was always afraid that it's funny once you get that. It's really, really bad, because I'll never forget when we first came to California. I was always afraid of my German accent, Oh, I was scared. If I'd be around people, I wouldn't talk. So I went to work in the shipyard. Just for 9 months I worked in the shipyards. Well, when I went to work in the shipyards, oh my gosh, they couldn't talk English. There was Portuguese, there was Italians, I thought, well, gee whiz. I thought I can talk a lot better than they can. And that's the time I really and truly got over it. Because up until then, I had a brother-in-law that was married to my youngest sister, Tex, and he didn't talk German. And I thought, oh my gosh, I stayed with her for a while, and I'd say to her, he'd be home and I wouldn't talk. So when he'd go to work, I'd say, oh, I'm so glad he's go to work. And now I can talk again. Because I was very, very, very self-conscious about my accent. And even when I went to college, I was scared. But because I had to give a speech in college, and oh my God, I don't know how long I practiced, because another guy right before me had a speech, and we had such a strict teacher, Miss Ewan, and she criticized him about his accent. I thought, oh my gosh, here I go. Oh, I'll never make it. I was so, and thank God she never did criticize me. But I was so particular that I wasn't going to mispronounce a word while I was up there. So it is kind of, when you in that condition, you're kind of self-conscious about some of that stuff. But once I heard all those people talk, you couldn't even understand them, like your Mexicans and Portuguese. So then I got over my being afraid to talk. Now I talk too much.
Not at all. What did your family think of having Mass in English? Did you guys like the change? It went more to English at church?
At church?
Yeah.
Well, I at first I didn't. You mean that it changed from Latin to English? I didn't like it at first at all. But now, really and truly, at least you understand what they're saying. And I think the younger generation likes it better. The older people were so used to the Latin that they would follow with their missal, but still. But I think your younger generation is more apt to understand it, and so there's some changes I still don't like, but that's okay. Because I'm too old to change, so there's still. But that changing to English, it's fine with me. Yeah. But the only reason I liked Latin was because they used to say it's a universal church. You can go any place you want. It's always the same. See, in that part, I liked. So that's the only part I like because it stands for wherever you go, it's always the same. And see, now it isn't. It's just every place you go, it's different. But I think it's better for your younger generations. I really do. I hope so.
When you were growing up, did you have Sunday school or did you have any kind of church school? We had what you call catechism and prayers, and we went to school. Like I think it was on a Saturday afternoon. But really, like after confirmation, we didn't. We went until we had confirmation, and then we didn't go anymore. But, what were funerals like?
Oh my gosh, funerals are. I thought they were very, very sad. I think they're much better now than what they used to be because I remember, of course, I was already married, had my 2 children before my dad was the first one in the family that died. So it was really the first funeral I went to that I was close to home, And it was sad, but they were really sad. I mean, much more so than they're now. I still remember, like when they put the casket down and then everybody would take soil or something and put it on, and that noise on there, that used to just, and I can still remember, that noise on there. So I do believe in doing that, and of course they don't do it anymore, and I don't believe in standing there and seeing a coffin go down. I don't. I think they can do that after I'm gone. I don't like that, because I didn't do it with my husband. No, I don't like funerals. I don't like talk about funerals.
We can skip.
No, I had too many now. I don't want any. All my brothers and sisters, there was 8 of us, and I'm the only one left. So funerals are awful to me.
We talk about something a little more pleasant.
Yeah.
What was your favorite holiday?
My favorite holiday? Christmas Eve. Oh, we had one. Oh, Christmas Eve started years and years ago when from Linton. I already lived in Linton with my folks when I still was home. We had Christmas Eve all the time. And they would come in, like there was Barbara and Frank and Johns, they were married. And like if there was a lot of snow or something, they would all get into a big sled or something. And they would come in, on Christmas Eve, they would come in. And we have what they call a Christkindl. That's a German. They had girls, ladies that were dressed up in white clothes, and they had a veil. You couldn't see their faces. They're dressed real pretty. Christkindl. They call that in Germany, Christkindl. And then they had I don't know what they call them. They had another. It wasn't Santa Claus. It was worse than Santa Claus. They had somebody with a blanket over him. Oh my gosh, he'd scare you. Oh, I hated that. But that happened on the farm. Now in town we didn't have that anymore. We just had the Christkindl But we had Christmas Eve dinner all the time. Then the kids go to bed, and then we'd go to Mass, midnight Mass. And then when you get home in the morning, then they'd go home. And we've had that when the first time we didn't have that was when my dad died. Mother didn't have it. And then when we moved to California, first Christmas in California, there was just the four of us. I had the two girls, and it was the saddest Christmas I think we've ever spent. We were all alone. But we had it, we kept it up, you know. Every Christmas Eve we were the four of us. Well then, as the girls got married, now there's 25 of us. Out of the two girls, now we have 25. But Christmas Eve, everybody is home. My grandson just moved to Houston, Texas. He was transferred. And I talked to him the other day. He says, Grandma, don't worry, I'll be home for Christmas Eve. Everybody comes. And Dennis told his wife before he got married, he says, Christmas Eve we'll go to Grandma's house. Christmas Day, I don't care where you go, but on Christmas we do. So we have Christmas Eve at our house. Christmas Day they can go to their in-laws or they can go wherever they want to. But Christmas Eve is at our house. That's my favorite. I just can't wait. Favorite, yeah. And I still fix the dinner. I fix it, the whole dinner. They don't say I bring this, I bring that. When they if they want to bring cookies or candy or something, but the dinner I fix by myself.
Is it the same dinner you had when you were
same menu every year. I said, is that okay? Fine. They don't care, fine. So I said, well, you know what you're going to get. You get the same menu every year.
What is the menu?
Menu is fried chicken and ham, and then I make the German coleslaw, and then we have rice with the meat in it. We bake rice, and then we have baked beans. We don't have sweet potatoes because that goes with Thanksgiving. We try Thanksgiving and Christmas are so close. That's why we don't have turkey for Christmas. Because we have turkey, we have family. We usually all of them have the whole family usually gathers at Thanksgiving too, and at Easter. Those are the three holidays that everybody. Sometimes one misses, but most of the time they all come. But Christmas Eve they all come. So we try not to have the same thing. Like instead of sweet potatoes, we make beans. And then instead of the ham, we do have instead of the turkey, we have the ham, you know. And then we have fried chicken. We have ham and fried because some of them don't like ham, some of them don't like chicken, so we have fried ham. And then we have baked rice, and then we have mashed potatoes. Next, we always run out of mashed potatoes. So this coming Christmas, I told the girls we're going to put 2 kettles on the stove this year, so we'll have enough mashed potatoes. Because the children like mashed potatoes. See, I have 10 great-grandchildren. And I have 5 grandchildren, and I have 2 daughters, and there's 25 of us.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
And we have a table set in the dining room. We have a table set in the living room. And we have a table set in the kitchen. The girls, great-grandgirls, they sit in the kitchen. The boys sit in the family room. So the children don't eat at the table, and the grown-ups sit in the 2 big tables. So it's a sit-down dinner.
Wow. What would have been typical gifts you had gotten for Christmas Eve when you were a child?
When I was a child?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we didn't get gifts. They had a paper sack. Like you buy groceries, but a small sack. And they put all kinds of stuff in it, like walnuts and almonds and hazelnuts and those black, what do they call those things? Brown one. And then they had, we always got an orange for Christmas, and then they had some kind of a cookie that's kind of stuff. It was just stuff to eat. That was our Christmas. We didn't get gifts. Now later on, after we moved into town and later on, then we got gifts. Then we started buying gifts. But up until then, and oh my gosh, like my dad's name was John. Well, there's just the second day after Christmas is St. John's, and they always would celebrate. We didn't celebrate birthdays. People never celebrated birthdays. They celebrated namesdays. And so St. John's is the second day after Christmas. Well, St. Steve and St. John, my dad's name. Well, then everybody came to the namesday. It was just almost like a wedding. The whole neighbors, and they'd drink and dance and all. And everybody would bring these little packages. Oh my gosh, for us, for the kids, we had all kinds of stuff when he had a namesday. kids. They bring little goodies, nuts, walnuts. Oh my gosh, the little hazelnuts and the cookies and orange. Now my oranges fall off, and they don't even pick them up. That was a treat to get an orange for Christmas, and probably an apple. So that's when we had apple. We always have in the wintertime. At the farm we always had apples. They would buy them in a big box, and they put a crate or something, put them underneath the bed, and that was one of our lunch. Syrup and peanut butter sandwich and an apple. That was our lunch for school.
Every day.
Every day. They didn't change. Sometimes they changed the peanut butter to just, they always made choke cherry jelly. They don't do this still. I wonder if they still make choke cherry jelly. I used to just love that, but I don't know if anybody ever make it. My mother everybody used to make choke cherry jelly. And sometimes when they run out of peanut butter and syrup, then they just put in choke cherry jelly between the bread. And in the wintertime, maybe we got they make German sausage, so sometimes we got a piece of German sausage in there too. So it was okay. We had a good lunch. We all grew up pretty good.
So for Names Day, would you celebrate everybody's names day, like your mom, dad, and all?
Well, yes, like now if it was St. Peter, well, they would celebrate. Different, whatever their name was, like if it was, now I can't remember if ever celebrating my mother's was Magdalena, but I know like St. John's or St. Joseph's or St. Paul or whatever name there was, they would celebrate. Then they go to those people's houses, and celebrate. I mean, they only celebrated our house for St. John's. And then a lot of weddings were, like both of my brother's weddings were at our house because we had that big kitchen. So they would dance in the kitchen, and they would they always had a guy that we were talking about, John Schwab, with the accordion, sitting up, playing. And the way they got paid, like for instance, the guys would go up. Like if you'd want to dance, you go up and I don't know how much money they gave him, a quarter, whatever, and they say, well, next year they want a waltz or they want a polka or whatever. And that's the way the accordion player made his money. And when there was a wedding, talking about weddings last 3 days. The old weddings lasted 3 days. They have the wedding, they have a big party the night before. They have the wedding day. Like when they come home from church, they have dinner, and then they start dancing. And they dance. And then they have supper, and then they dance, and they dance. And sometimes they dance all night. And then in the morning, they get up and dance again. They usually have 3 days of wedding. I mean, that's when my brother got married, when John got married. Now, when Frank got married, I don't even remember that anymore. Now, my brother Joe was not married at home. He was married in Montana, so he was but as it went on, it was not that bad. But years ago, I mean, that was their tradition that there was 3 days of celebration for a wedding. And the weddings were big. I mean, they had, oh my gosh, they had all kinds, maid of honor and bridesmaids and, I don't know, groomsmen or whatever they were, I don't know, but there are a whole bunch of people there, all kinds of people. And it's big, long, the wedding, I can remember weddings. My brother John, but I was really young. I remember though, but I remember dancing with the old men. The old people would come and me and my sister and they would dance. And we were so proud. And I got to tell you about our singing. My sister Nina and I sang. Dad was so proud of his these little two girls. Every place they went, we got to go along. We always got to go along, because we had to sing. And oh my gosh, I didn't want to sing, but we always had to sing. So this one particular day we went to a wedding. I think it was at Soccer's or something. I went and I hit myself. I didn't want to sing. I didn't want to go. Well, Rosina sang, and she got a quarter. And I felt so bad. Now, why didn't I sing? I would have got a quarter. But oh my gosh, we went up north. I think it's Karlsruhe. It's up by Minot. I had an uncle up there, and they had a big wedding up there. And we got to go along because my dad made us sing. And we didn't sing bad at all. I think I sang a high and she sang alto. I don't know, it wasn't bad. I guess it wasn't, I don't know. But he always would make us sing on those. So why we always got to go along, because he'd make us sing. Well, see, he had boys in between. He only see the dog. Then here, these two little girls. So he, gosh, he made us sing. He was so proud. That's what I mean. Dad was, he was, and like when we were sick, Dad was the one that really took care of us. I know when I was so sick that time, he was up there with me for a whole week, and Mom wasn't up there because she was home with the family, you know. And but he was up there that whole week with me, and like during when the flu was, I don't know if you remember. I mean, if you ever read about the big flu after First World War, it was such a terrible, terrible time. And oh my gosh, he took care of us. I mean, he made us hot toddies, and you know, like he would take honey and whiskey and hot water, and then we would have to. Oh, and I hated it. We had to drink it. And then he put us to bed, and they had what they call feather ticks, you know, they put on you, feather quills, and he'd put that on, and he'd make us sweat. I mean, we had, the perspiration would be just running down. And then he'd let us lay there for a while, and well, then he'd take that off and put dry stuff on it. And you know that, my gosh, a lot of people died at that time during the flu, especially women that were pregnant. My mother had a cousin that, you know, that talk about that Johnny Klein that used to play with Lawrence Welk. He was a drummer. His mother died during that time, during that war, right after the war, because a lot of pregnant women died that had babies. Because see, there were no doctors, so you had to take care of yourself. And so one day he didn't hear from his sister, Aunt Catherine. She didn't live too far from us, so he walked over there to see how they were doing. And oh my gosh, there was some of them he found in the shed, and some of them he found all over where they had passed out, you know, from it. And he got them all in the house, and he went out and he hired somebody to come in and take care of them. Because there's no doctors; they just had to do it themselves. And Dad was, in that respect, Dad always took over. When we were sick, he's the one that took us over. But every single one of us, just one by one, you'd get sick, and then he would. See, I think he's one of the first ones. My brother is the one, he was going to school, private school, and of course we'd have probably gotten it anyway, but he got it in town, and so Dad went and got him. Then everybody. It was really, really, I don't remember too much of it because I was quite young then, but I remember just a little bit about making us sweat. And making us, so. But that was a really bad time, that flu, really, really bad. They didn't have flu shots then. They didn't even have a doctor. They probably had a doctor for every 1,000 people or whatever, you know. There was just no doctors. But we had one lady, we always called her Grandma Schaefer. And I think she delivered more babies than the doctor around Linton and around place. And she was a midwife, they call them. Well, anyway, she came over from Germany. And in Germany, she was a doctor. She performed like a doctor.
You were sharing a story about the midwife.
Yeah, they call her Grandma Schaefer. Everybody called her Grandma Schaefer. And she came over from Russia. And in Russia, she was a doctor. I mean, she acted as a doctor. But then when she came to America, she was supposed to get out the medical license and all that, and she never did. But everybody, if a child was sick or if somebody was sick, they would always go to Grandma Schaefer. And as far as babies were concerned, I think the whole county had her to deliver their babies. Everybody had Grandma Schaefer come out and deliver the baby. And she was just such a wonderful person. Or if somebody had something wrong, they would go to Grandma, and she was good. Everybody liked Grandma Schaefer. So because there was only the one doctor that was there, and I think she had more patience than he did. She was really a wonderful. I loved her, Grandma Schaefer. In fact, it was funny. Clara, that's my sister-in-law, but at one time she was my friend, one of my best friends, then she finally married my brother, and it was her grandma. And we went down there to see Grandma Schaefer. And they used to make wine with those choke cherry jelly. Choke cherry. There wasn't the jelly, but it was the choke cherries that they used, and they made the wine. And oh, it was so good because it was sweet. Real sweet. Well, okay, Clara and I, we had choke cherry wine, and honest to God, and a pretty big glass, but it was so easy to drink, just like fruit. Oh my, we didn't hardly make it home, and we were laughing. We really had it. And we were about Gosh, I bet we were still in grade school. We were just little, but we had church wine, and she was a wonderful, wonderful person. Everybody liked Grandma Schaefer.
Excuse me. Now, when people did get sick, did you always go to the doctor, or did you have remedies?
Oh, no. When you got sick, unless you absolutely had to. I mean, there were so many remedies they had, They would. One thing about it is that they would, like I was telling you, about putting you to bed and making you perspire, and they said that the fever comes down, and then because I don't remember of ever going to a doctor outside when I had that operation. I was never in the hospital except when I had my first baby, I was in the hospital. And at that time, when I had my first baby, we were in the hospital for 10 days. So by that time.
What year was that?
Well, she was born quite a few years ago. I'm not going to tell her age. Maybe she doesn't like it if I tell it on here.
Okay.
Oh, she's going to have no. But that's been quite a few years ago when they had it. And they made you stay in for 10 days. The first few days, the 7th day you got to sit up, and the 8th day you had to move. I mean, it was way too long. I mean, so they decided that. Now I think they don't have them in there long enough because they just have the babies and come home. But it was a long time ago. But I can't remember I can't remember ever going. My dad went in a lot to a doctor because he had a real bad heart, and then he was overweight. Then they would give him pills for something or other. And my mother was sick a lot, but she didn't go to the doctor very often. They would just take pills. And they always try to cure their own thing, whatever they have. Like they have a cold, and they have because I don't remember. My sister had her tonsils taken out. I didn't. So I don't believe I went to the doctor that much, except for that one time and at that time, like my mother, she didn't even think of anything. She thought I just had a stomach ache. I was hurt so bad, it was a stomach ache. So in fact, instead of putting cold on like you're supposed to, she put hot on, and that's why it ruptured. So from then on, my mother very seldom if you were sick, she very seldom did anything, because she was always afraid she would do the wrong thing. But we were never that sick. My sister was sick a lot. She had something wrong with her stomach, and she would go to doctors. But you didn't go to doctors that often, even if you were sick. And school, I don't remember. I did miss school a lot because I used to, maybe about once a month or something, I used to get those migraine headaches. Oh, they were twitchy. Oh my God. And I'd have to stay home from school. I mean, I couldn't. And then I would vomit or something, then it would be gone. But and it kind of runs in my family because my daughter had it and my grandson had it, has migraine headaches. But you don't go to the doctors for that. You just, and that's all that I ever had was just migraine headaches. But you didn't go to the doctors for it. Now they go too often, I think. I still don't go that often, but it's okay. I think people should go and get checkups. That's not the point. I really do. I think that if there's something wrong with you, the earlier you can find out what it is, the better you're off. So I believe in going to doctors. I'm not against doctors at all.
What kind of home remedies would you use if you had a headache? What would you do?
Well, they had mostly aspirin at that time, a lot of aspirin. And see, that's one thing. I used to get all those headaches. And at that time, they didn't even know that aspirin causes your stomach, because I take aspirin, oh my gosh, then I get sick, my hurt, so bad. But then finally I realized that those aspirins, I can't take aspirin. I take one aspirin, I get the terrible. So I finally found out what I thought was curing it was making me sick. So then I quit. I don't take aspirin at all. But then they came out with Tylenol and all kinds of stuff, so you can take all kinds of pills. I think people more or less, like if I get a headache or I don't feel good, I just take Tylenol or whatever. But of course, I take a lot of pills because nowadays people take pills. If you just open your mouth and they say, oh, you want a pill? Because I take pills as you get older. You take high blood pressure pills, you take stomach pills, you take pills. If you say, I said to the doctor, I had a checkup before I came home, and I said, oh, sometimes I feel kind of nervous. And she says, oh, do you want nerve pills? I said, no, I don't want nerve pills. I mean, they just love to give you pills. I think everybody, I take a lot of pills, but some of them, I even told the doctor, I said, gosh, why do I have to take that pill? I said, oh, well, he said, it really doesn't hurt you. It's just a stomach liner. It doesn't hurt your heart, doesn't hurt. Because I take heart pills, because I had, in 1975, they were going to give me a bypass, because I was really bad. My arteries were closed up, 2 of them. And so I was in the hospital, and they was going to give me a bypass. Well, he said, instead of giving, and at that time, they were just giving bypasses. God, that just kind of started it, and they were just giving bypass. So, and I had a wonderful, wonderful doctor. And he said, well, Mary, he says, we'll give you some pills. I'll never forget, it was Cogard, it's C-O-G-A-R, Cogard. We'll take 2, and then 3, and then 1. And so that's what I did. And he told me to walk. Well, I've been walking ever since. I walk every morning. I used to walk a long, long ways, but I don't walk that much anymore. I mean, I don't maybe walk a mile every morning, but that's about it. But I used to walk 2-3 miles a day. He said, just we'll try it. And he says, start walking. He says, it doesn't make any difference if you start slow. Just keep one pace. So every time you change and your heart starts regular, the beat starts a different beat. He says, so if you start fast, walk fast. If you walk slow, walk slow. But she says, and when you walk, he says, and don't stop and talk to everybody. He says, keep walking. So I've been doing that. I've been walking now since 1975. I've been walking. And I kind of watch my diet a little bit. I don't eat between meals, and I don't try to eat right. Like I try to eat vegetables, try to eat. So in all my years, I've never taken a vitamin pill. I know a lot of people take vitamin pills, but I eat 3 meals a day. But I always say if you eat the right food, you don't need vitamins because you get your vitamins from your food. So I have been lucky and I've been very good. I mean, I sometimes get angina attacks, but not that often. And then I take a nitroglycerin, and then if it goes away, he said if one of them doesn't do it, take another one. If that one doesn't do it, then call 911. Well, so far I haven't called 911. So I've been doing pretty good. I'm lucky. I've been doing really good.
When you were a child, did you go to the dentist?
That's one thing they took me to the dentist. We had the one dentist who was so wonderful years ago when we had those little baby teeth or something like that, Well, he would just pull them out with you. He'd put a dime or a nickel in your hand. He'd say, squeeze it, and then he'd pull your tooth, But they didn't like to shoot, I don't think. Not. My family had a lot of problems. I know some of my family had trouble with, but my mother never had false teeth. My dad did, but I never had. I don't have false teeth. But usually I went to the dentist, and usually instead of really filling it or doing something, they were so apt to pull them. They're a toothpick or something, boom, out they come, And so when I got to California, I went to the dentist. And he said, he looked at me and he said, my gosh, he said, how come you haven't got any teeth, but they would have. I said, well, they just pulled them. I said, they didn't do anything. He says, well, how about putting some teeth back in there? I said, I don't want a partial plate. Because my sister had a partial plate, and it was on the dresser more than it was in her mouth. I said, I just want a partial plate. Well, what if we put an implant? If you can put them in that you can't take out. I said, good. So then, that's what I had done. So I had my implants put in, and now I'm really particular about my teeth. I go every 6 months, because I don't want false teeth. So I go every 6 months. But years ago, they didn't do that. They didn't. Well, and they didn't brush like they do now. My gosh, I can't even remember having a toothbrush when I lived on the farm. I don't remember. I don't know whether I had it or not. I don't think I had a toothbrush on the farm. I don't think anybody did. I don't know how they kept their teeth clean. Washed them, I guess. I don't know. Come to think of it, I really don't know.
How often would you take a bath?
Oh, baths we took at least every Friday. Put a tub in, and they in and out. And in the summertime, well, in town we had a bathtub. So we could take a bath anytime you wanted. But in the farm but they kept clean. Like I was telling you, like we had white sheets on the bed. My gosh. And people, they kept clean. They didn't take a shower like they do every day. But they washed up and they were clean. They kept clean. But on Fridays, they really cleaned you. They got a big tub in and they'd set you in and they'd clean you real good. And the other ones went in and I don't know if they even changed water. I can't remember that. But in the summertime, we'd go down to the creek and go swimming, or we have big barrels or drum outside, and we'd put water in, and then the sun would heat it, and we'd go in and out. So summertime, it was okay. We could. In the wintertime, it was not that, because it gets cold in North Dakota. And you can't. And then that's the time we still have those out toilets too, when we lived there. That was how people, when you think back how people lived, and they made it, and they were happy, and they survived everything, and lived good. I admire those people that started out with practically no conveniences whatsoever. And now, gosh, everything has to be, like you say, everybody has to have their own bedroom. Well, we didn't have their own. We had an extra bedroom, but that was the guest room. We slept together, But nowadays, everybody has their own bedroom, and so things changed some.
Can you tell me about World War II? Do you remember when?
I remember Pearl Harbor, like I used to. Oh my gosh! And one of my dad, we lived in town. One of our neighbor boy was in Pearl Harbor, and he got killed in Pearl Harbor. One of our neighbor boy in town. And yeah, I remember. I was teaching school then back in North Dakota, and that was in 41. See, we left in 42. I remember Pearl Harbor so well when it came on the radio. Oh my gosh! Yeah, we had, and then we left in. A lot of the boys, of course, were drafted and on, and so we left in the spring of the year. That was in 41, 42. We left and came to California, and my husband was. They put him in. He was in 1A for a while, to be drafted, and then as time went on, then they said, well, they changed it so much from 1A to 2, whatever. Sometimes they said on a certain age you don't have to go. And then with children you don't have to go. And, it was all, and it seems like it all, and see, sometimes by the time it came from North Dakota to California, by that time it was changed again. So he was really lucky that he never was never drafted because he worked in the shipyard. That was another thing, is a deferment. If you worked in the shipyard, you got a deferment from the government working in the shipyard, and he worked in the shipyard. But you couldn't buy anything during World War II, nothing. Like you couldn't even at that time they were wearing nylon hose. You couldn't buy nylon hose. You couldn't buy white shirts. It was really funny. You couldn't buy like refrigerators or stoves or cars and we got our car wasn't very good, and we lived in Pittsburgh, California at the time, and Pete worked in Richmond. That's where the shipyards were. Well, we got to buy a new car because on account of transportation from Pittsburgh to Richmond, so we were allowed to buy a car. But gas, you only got so much. You also got special gas because he had to travel. But oh my gosh, some of the people that didn't travel, they had a heck of a time to get enough stamps to even get around. And like you couldn't buy butter, there's meat, you got food stamps, you got all it wasn't that easy. Boy, you ate a lot of Pam and stuff like that, that you could buy. And you could buy, like people, I think people saved money because they couldn't spend it. You couldn't buy anything. You couldn't buy anything. But you were froze on the job. And I worked, my friend, because my girls were, when I was 5, and the other was 4, 3, and I didn't much want to go to work because I didn't know. And so they talked me into it. So I went to work in the shipyards. I worked 9 months in the shipyards. And I just didn't like it, and the kids, they just were not taken care of, and so I quit. 9 months I worked, and I quit, and I told him, I said, I'm quitting, I'm not. Well, he said, you can't get a job anyplace else. I said, I don't care, because I'm going to stay home with my kids. I'm going to stay home with my 2 girls. So then I quit, and I stayed home, and I never did go to work until the girls, the oldest one was in at that time, they call it middle school now. Well, it was junior high, and then Farner was, I think, in 4th or 5th grade. And then I went back to work, and then I worked for. My husband really and truly never did much want me to. See, years ago, the women just didn't work. You know, they stayed home and took care of the family, and that was it. And he never much wanted me to work. But then I went to work, and I worked 10 years, and it was, I worked in a place where they did a lot of overseas shipping. They would put it in boxes like motors and things, and then what I had to do is put the address, I would cut it out in a machine, and then I would spray it on at the address where it's supposed to go to, and that was my job. And I worked for, and it was a government contractor. And I worked for 10 years, and then I quit. Then I retired. But my husband was glad, because when I first went to work, I said, oh, I got to go to work because the girls have to go to, both the girls went to college. The girls have to go to college. Then what are you going to work for? Well, they both are going to get married, and I need that. So then after the last one got married, he says, now what are you going to work for? And then I quit. I worked a couple of months, and I quit. Then we moved anyway. We lived in Richmond. So when we came to California, we lived in Pittsburgh, and then we moved to Richmond. And then in 1963, we moved to San Leandro. And then I quit working. I haven't worked since.
You're not missing it either.
I don't miss it. Really, work, I always say women never retire. They do the same thing. You still cook, you still wash, you still do. I said, I always tell everybody, if there is such a thing as reincarnation, if there is such a thing, reincarnation, I don't want to come back a man. I don't want to come back as a woman again. Please. Bring me back as a man. At least I can retire.
Can't say necessarily disagree. Back to World War II.
Oh, God.
Did you hear a lot about what was happening?
Oh, yeah. No, of course we had radio. We didn't. There was no television. Oh, no. We had the radio. But now Pete, my husband, worked until it almost closed up. And then when it almost closed up, boy, he was put on 1A, whatever it was. So he went and got his physical in San Francisco, was ready to, and then VJ Day came. Oh my gosh, what a celebration. The whole town, you would not believe it. If you'd have been in a city, I don't know what it was around here, like when the VJ, I mean, I bet there wasn't a person in the house. Everybody was outside celebrating in town. And we lived in Richmond. Oh my gosh, it was absolutely unbelievable how people celebrated when VJ Day came. But my husband was free. I mean, he had his physical and everything. He was just about ready to be called. And oh gosh, and everybody said, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" I don't know. Whether I will go home, because at that time we were just renting, we would just live in a government apartment. Because the government put up apartments where people could, and at that time that's when your colored people a lot of colored people start coming to the West, because the shipyard, Kaiser Shipyard, they brought them up on the train, and they paid their fare up. They brought them up from the South to work in the shipyards. And so that's when a lot of people came to the West Coast, up around where we are, just to go to work in the shipyards. So, and they stayed. I mean, that's our home now. But we lived in Richmond that time when when that happened, because that's where the shipyards were. They had 3 big shipyards there. And that was, but they worked, you had to work 6 days a week. Couldn't work 5, 6 days. And the top wages, journeyman wages, was $1.25 an hour. Those were top wages. Now the foreman got a little bit more. He probably got $1.50 or something like. But if you were a journeyman, like a welder or burner, whatever, you got $1.25 an hour. But you worked 6 days a week. And your pay is like, I think it was like $62.50 or something a week or something. They get a heck of a lot more now for an hour.
Yeah.
Some up.
A little bit more. But how far would the money stretch then?
Yeah. Well, you couldn't buy anything. You couldn't buy anything. There was that. And of course, everything was so much cheaper. Your food and everything. Oh, you couldn't live on that now. No way. God, no way could you live on that now. But at that time, you could. I mean, you could save money because where are you going to spend it? You couldn't buy a car. You could buy a refrigerator. You couldn't buy anything. And you even had to have food stamps to buy food. If your stamps ran out, you just didn't have food. You know.
Did you ever?
No, we never ran out. I had a nephew, Frank Horner, and he was in the Navy. And he was stationed at Treasure Island, and they had what they call a commissary there where you could go and buy stuff. Well, he could go and buy. So he used to come over and he'd bring big cans that there was bacon in there, or, you know, he used to buy stuff in there, and then he'd bring it over, which then we didn't have to use stamps that he would buy and then bring it over to us. Nobody we never ran out of food or anything. In fact, I still have some stamps at home that I didn't use up. Just in case. I have to send them over to Iraq now and get some food.
Speaking of other wars, what was Korea like? Did Korea impact you the same way that World War II did?
The what?
Did the Korean War impact
you? Oh, no,
well,
no. I don't think so. I don't remember any different than that. And even the Vietnam War, as far as your living or anything is concerned, it was no different. I mean, you could buy anything you want, and of course it was terrible. I mean, there's only one person that I knew that was in there, and that was my second husband's son was in the Korean War. Not in the Korean, in the Vietnam War, and he's got some awful sad stories. But that was bad. But see, I didn't know anybody really that was in the Second World War. There were so many relatives in it, and so many that were killed that I knew, relatives. So that was a really bad. Now Vietnam was different. I don't know of anybody, that was in the Vietnam War. But the Second World War, I knew a lot of them, and some of them got killed, didn't come back. But yeah, it was terrible. But this one, the Vietnam War, I didn't know anybody that was killed. So it didn't affect us in any way.
Oh, okay. Are there any other stories you'd like to share about childhood, anything? Okay.
No, I really don't know. No, that's okay. There's just too many. I'd be here all afternoon, so.
Okay. I got one last question then for you, and then we'll stop.
All right.
Why do you think it's important to share your life story?
Well, I don't know. I think about it so much, and then it's fun sometimes to really tell somebody something what you're saying, and it really seems. I love to when I get to somebody. I start to. I went out with a lady. She took me to a recital, a ballet recital, and we start talking about days, and I start talking about it, and about Catherine the Great going over to Russia, and bringing all my parents and all that, and she said, this is so interesting. I'm going to come back and I want to talk to you some more. So sometimes you feel like it's really something to talk about, and you wonder, why do you still remember all that,
Do your kids ask you a lot of stories too? Ask you to tell?
My kids.
Yeah.
To have
Do you want to know what it was like?
To have stories. No, they know. They enjoy the book that we have, that we made. That they enjoy that. They really enjoyed it. And the ones that didn't come, they wish they would have now, because it's a sad. But because like the girls, they hadn't been home. They don't know much about. They don't remember because they were 5 and 3 when we left. So they don't remember anything. I mean, that's their home down there. So it was really, and then we didn't come back that often. In the first place, we didn't have any gas. First place, we didn't have any money. If we'd have had money, we wouldn't be living in California now. We'd be living in North Dakota. Because when we first got to California, it was hard to get a job, although there was a lot of jobs open. But California, especially where we are, around the Bay Area, the union was real strong. I mean, you had to be a union member or you didn't get a job, you know. So it was really hard for by the time we got a job, by the time my husband got a job, we were broke, completely broke. I mean, because he didn't work. The first week we stayed in a hotel because we couldn't get a place to live. And so we stayed in a hotel and we ate out. And then we finally got one room and a bathroom. But Pete finally, my husband finally got a job in the steel mill, where he got 58 cents an hour for work, the steel mill. But then we finally, we went and we thought we had a place to live. Well, he went in there and the lady came out and she saw that we had 2 children. And at that time, they didn't rent to people with children. If you had children, they didn't want to rent to it. She said, I'm sorry, but we can't rent to people with children. So then we were stuck. Madeline says, Mother, why don't you send us home to Grandma? Then you can rent the house. So it was kind of sad. And then we finally, the county, I think it was the county, they built homes. They were duplexes. And we had 2 bedrooms, and they were $30 a month. Absolutely everything. Yeah, and no furniture, but all your lights, your water, nothing at all. You just paid $30 a month, which was just absolutely. You had to buy your furniture and whatever. But that time, you know, we were pretty darn broke. You know, we didn't have much money when we left North Dakota. So, but when we first left North Dakota, and he didn't get a job, but we didn't have any money to go home. I mean. If we'd had money, we'd have probably gone home. And he got all dressed up, not dressed up, but he got all ready to go to work one morning because he had a job. So when he got there, the guy says, well, where's your union card? Union card? In North Dakota, you never even heard of a union. You know, he said, I never got a union card. So he didn't get the job. So it was pretty hard unless you had a union card. But he got a job in the steel mill. Then from then on, we were never broke. After we got the first check, we did okay. But I'll tell you, because we were running out of money. We didn't have that much. So we had pretty hard. Like I say, if we'd had money, we'd have got to turn around and come back and heck with California. But it's the funniest thing. We were there for 3 years. And then we came back to North. We were also homesick. Oh my gosh! I said I'm going to walk home if I can. I'm going to walk home. I was so homesick. So we came back to North Dakota, and it was during harvesting, hot, and my husband Pete helped to cut because a lot of the boys were gone. They couldn't get any help, you know. So he hired out to my brother to do for the harvesting. When it was over with, he says, "The heck with North Dakota! I'm going back to California." That work was unbearable. So, but we had sort of planned on staying, you know, in North Dakota. But after that work in the harvest field, he had it. And then after that, before I did not like California. I hated it. I hated everything. They'd say, "Isn't this pretty? Isn't that pretty?" I couldn't say. But then after we got back, and then I felt like at home. Then we went and we bought a house, and then we stayed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then you were home.
Then I had a home, yeah. But before then, I just absolutely did not like it because I really, if you go away, I really and truly think everybody should make that trip home to find out it isn't like you left it. Because when we got home, all the people, our friends we had and everything, they were all gone. There was nobody here. And then working out in the summertime in the wheat, hot. And he said, enough is enough. So then we went back to California. And then from then on, I knew we were going to stay, But up until then, we had all of our stuff packed, ready to ship back here. Yeah. But then we went back, and then we bought a house, and we stayed. And now we did real good. I'm real happy about it. Fine. It's crowded. It's really bad, but so it's crowded all over. It doesn't make any difference.
Well, do you have any other memories, thoughts you want to share?
I think it's enough.
All right. Thank you very much.